Jiddu Krishnamurti was one of the few men on this earth who knew the falseness of the self, who knew the falseness of the illusion that the human mind contains. He negated all the false concept of the mind and realized the fact and also preached the fact to the world. Now Krishnamurti was a very hard man to understand. Many people, like even his close associates, were not able to understand him fully. Even Krishnamurti said before dying that even my close associates didn't understand me fully. Now, to understand Krishnamurti truly, you have to compare his words, his texts to science, to Vedas, Upanishad, and to other philosophers. Then only you can grasp what he was trying to say. And after grasping what he was trying to say, you have to live by his words. Then only you can fully understand and realize his concepts, his philosophies. And I did both, so I could proudly say that yes, I understand him very well. So I will try to make you understand also. So let's get to his core philosophy.
Is there a difference between you and your conditioning? You understand my question?
It's very deeply ingrained.
No, just look at it. You say, how can I put away my conditioning? That means there is a you and the conditioning, which means there is a division, right? The you is also conditioned. I don't know if you follow.
Yes, I do.
Therefore, the problem is not you and the conditioning. There is only conditioning. But we have grown in the habit of me and the condition. I must do something about it, as though I was different from it.
Freedom from conditioning. When you truly realize that there is no separation between conditioning and you, you are not being conditioned. You are conditioning. You are your thought. You are your emotions. You are your feelings. There is no separation between these two things. You are conditioning. When you realize it fully, then only you are freed from conditioning. Now, what does this mean exactly? What does conditioning mean? Well, let me explain this from an example. Let's say there is a mud of clay. I conditioned it, designed it to a pot. Now I conditioned it to become a pot. And just like that mud of clay, we humans are also conditioned, either by evolution or either by society. Every action you take is either due to societal conditioning or evolutionary conditioning. Well, let me give you an example. Let's say you make a decision to open a business, and you made that decision because you wanted to earn money and self-respect. Now, to gain money and self-respect, you have to open a business. Why? Because you saw other businessmen gain self-respect and self-worth through that. Or your father said that you have to do business, or your teacher or your friends influenced you to do that business so that you can achieve your need of self-worth and resources like money. The decision to open a business was not exactly yours. It was societal conditioning that made you to go and pursue the opportunity, or you could say opening of a new business. And just like that, not only business, even marriage, even job, even selecting friends, everything that you hold important in this life is societal conditioning. You feel that this human, this friend, this girl, this parent, this relative is very important to me. All this is just an societal conditioning. And let's talk about evolutionary conditioning. Now, evolutionary conditioning is biological need that condition you to act. Like you are thirsty, you want water. That thirst is making you act to drink water. You are not making a free decision to go and drink water. The thirst, the hunger is making you to go and drink and to go and eat. You are not making the decision. So evolution here is making the decision for you. So both societal and evolutionary conditioning controls you. But you would say controls you? Who is the you here? Well, no one. That conditioning is you. You are not conditioned. You are conditioning itself. Everything about you is conditioning. You are conditioning itself. This is what Krishnamurti is trying to say. There is no separation between conditioning and you. You are conditioning. Your mind, your brain, your thoughts, your emotions, everything is conditioning. So what is left? Nothing. So you are conditioning. There is nothing out of you that is conditioning. You equal to conditioning. Well, if everything is conditioned, there cannot be any control, because everything is being controlled by that conditioning. So there is no control in you, and if there is no control, there cannot be any self. The illusion of control gives the illusion of self. Hence, the conditioned body and mind is not you. It is just purely conditioned nature, just purely and cause and effect. You does not exist. The self does not exist. The self is a false concept, and that false concept is also often called ego in spirituality, like Bhagavad Gita and Upanishad and Vedas. So ego is this false concept of self which comes through the illusion of control, and the illusion of control gets defeated when the mind realizes that itself and the body which carries the mind is purely conditioning. And if the mind purely realizes that if it is conditioning, it gets rid of the false concept of the self, it gets rid of the false control. So if the mind realizes that it is purely conditioning, it gets rid of the false illusion of control. And if there is no illusion of control, there is no illusion of self. Hence, ego is destroyed. And what does destroying ego has to do with freedom from conditioning? Well, if you are conditioning, how can you get rid of conditioning? That is a confusion that many people come to. Well, to clear it, there is a simple logic. You cannot get rid of conditioning, never. But you can. Your mind can be rid of societal conditioning. Evolutionary conditioning will still act on your mind, like the prefrontal cortex, the salient network, the default mode network, the central executive network will all work. Those are just biological processes, biological conditioning. They will all work. But the societal conditioning, like fear, thought, and whatever you held as important concept in your life, will all be destroyed just by this realization that everything is conditioning. There is no self, there is no control. And the biological conditioning is the basic function of human body and brain. So there are three types of conditioning: biological conditioning, evolutionary conditioning, and societal conditioning. Biological conditioning, like drinking water, eating food, and secretion of waste, are all just biological process and conditioning. Evolutionary conditioning are the needs of human, like the needs for fulfillment. And the societal conditioning is the way to achieve those needs. You are born with these needs, evolutionary needs, and the society tells you how to achieve them. So you grew up in an environment, and that environment tells you how to achieve those needs. Those needs are already ingrained by evolutionary conditioning. The mind can only get rid of evolutionary conditioning and societal conditioning. It cannot get rid of biological process and biological mechanism, like the brain's working and functions and the body's working and function. It cannot get rid of that. Those conditioning are purely there. But the mind can get rid of evolutionary and societal conditioning, the way, the needs, the urge for needs, and the way to achieve them. The mind can get rid of them. Your needs and the ways to achieve them brings so many thoughts in your mind that the mind is very burdened by those thoughts. Hence, losing these conditioning can free your mind from this burden, and your mind and brain will always be like light, very free, very in peace. So there would be no thoughts of either evolutionary and societal conditioning. But to achieve this, to achieve freedom from evolutionary and societal conditioning, you have to fully realize that you are conditioning. You are not separate from conditioning. You are conditioning itself. Now, to make your mind realize that you are fully conditioning, you are conditioning, you have to prove your subconscious mind, which controls your 90 to 95% of behavior of your life. You have to prove your subconscious mind that you are conditioning. So to prove that, you have to analyze yourself 24/7. You have to analyze yourself in a way that you see your conditioning. Like when you get angry, when you get sad, when you feel fear, you have to analyze yourself at that moment so that you can fully see that there is conditioning acting. You have to find the root of that conditioning so that your mind and your subconscious mind fully realizes that yes, I am conditioning. When this realization happens, the mind gets free from conditioning. Basically, you have to self-analysis yourself to prove your subconscious and conscious mind fully that you are conditioning. Second topic, and one of his most famous philosophical concept of his, is the observer is observed.
That the observer is the observed.
Now, whenever you observe something, you're actually observing your own thought. Like, for example, I am watching this bottle. Now, there are thoughts coming in my mind that this bottle is empty, I have to fill it up to quench my thirst of water. Now, when I see this bottle, all these thoughts pop up in my mind. So, I am actually watching my own thoughts. I am not actually watching the bottle. These are my collection of memory, collection of experience, and collection of every perception and every knowledge and every information I took since I was born. So everything I observe myself, my own thoughts, my own emotions, my own fear. I'm actually observing myself because I am my own thought, I am my own emotion, I am my own conditioning, as I talked about previously. So I am my own thought, I am my own feelings, I am my own emotions, I am my own memory, I am my own experience. Hence, I am watching myself. The observer is observed. Now, how to observe without an observer? Well, it has the same answer as the previous one. When you get free from conditioning, you can observe without an observer. Well, let me explain you. When you observe something, you are actually observing your own thought. You are that thought at that moment. So let's say you're observing this bottle, you're actually observing your thought. So when you observe this bottle without any thought occurring in your mind, you are actually observing it truly without there being any observer, without there being any experiencer, without there any thoughts cluttering your mind. Now, how to observe without any thoughts occurring? Well, thoughts are purely result of confusion, and those confusion arise from the mind's conditioning of society and evolution. And if there is no conditioning of society and evolution, there would be no confusion. And if there is no confusion, there will be no thoughts. Now, how to get rid of this confusion? You have to analyze yourself 24/7. You have to deeply understand about yourself. And when you understand yourself, there would be no confusion. And when there is no confusion, whatever you observe, even yourself or outside world, there would be no thoughts. Now you would ask, how did Krishnamurti even speak if there was no thought? Well, there are two types of thought. One psychological thought, another practical thought. These thought arrives from memories. Practical thought arrives from practical memory, and psychological thought arrives from psychological memory. And memory are purely conditioning. Practical memory comes from practical conditioning like language and basic facts and memory of like relatives, friends, etc., etc. These do not become such a burden, and like but psychological memory comes from evolutionary and societal conditioning. These become a lot burden. This gives a lot of suffering. This clutters your mind. This makes your mind a gutter. And the third, which is the best memory, which is the understanding of reality, deep understanding of reality memory, gives no thought at all. It does not influence any thought or produce any thought. So there are three kinds of thoughts and memories. First, psychological memory, which produces psychological thoughts. Second, practical memory, which when needed produces practical thoughts. And last is deep understanding of reality, which does not need any thought at all and does not influence any thought at all. Why does this happen? Why is there no thoughts at deep understanding of reality memory? Well, because if you understand everything deeply, then there will be no thought at all, because thoughts comes out of confusion. As I explained before, thoughts comes out of confusion. Hence, there would be no need for thoughts. And now you would say, what is the confusion in language and like practical memory? Where is the confusion there? But it still produces thoughts. It doesn't produces thoughts without the will. Practical memory is basically assessed memory. You can assess that memory when needed. But psychological memory, whenever you don't even want to assess memory or thought, those thoughts will appear in its own. So the difference is this: in practical memory, when you need thoughts, you can go and assess it. In psychological memory, there is no option. Thoughts will arise in their own. And in the last, there is neither need nor the thoughts appear. In the understanding of deep understanding of reality, there is neither thought or there is neither need to assess the thoughts. So Jidda Krishnamurti talked through this to memory. He did not talk through the psychological memory. He only had condition of the deep understanding of reality and condition of practical memory. Only these two conditions were not worked on him. The conditioning of deep understanding of reality actually gives you the flow mode, actually gives you the choiceless awareness, which is my next topic. Choiceless awareness.
Choiceless awareness implies to be aware both objectively outside and inwardly without any choice. Just to be aware of the colors, of the tent, of the trees, the mountains, the nature, just to be aware, not choose. Say, I like this, I don't like that. I want this, I don't want that. right? To observe without the observer. The observer is the past which is conditioned, therefore is always looking from that conditioned point of view, therefore there is like and dislike, my race, my God, your God.
Now, choiceless awareness is basically pure awareness without interfering, and that pure awareness only comes when there is deep understanding of reality. So, in that deep awareness, in choiceless awareness, there is only practical thoughts, except that there is no thoughts at all. There is no thoughts of self, there is no thoughts of like ego, etc., no thoughts of society, societal pressure, fear, anger. There is nothing that. There is only practical thought, like the thought of language and the daily life thoughts which is required to go through life. So what exactly is choiceless awareness? Choiceless awareness is basically observing without an observer, pure observation, pure awareness, and without an observer meaning without a thought. And deep understanding memory does not influence any thought nor require any thought. So that is why deep understanding of reality influence you to be aware without any thought, to observe you without any thought. And like the practical memory is only needed when required. So hence there is no choice. In both those memory, choice are not required at all. So that is why only this memory constitutes the choiceless awareness. I would ask, is there any choice in practical memory? No, there is none. Whenever there is deep understanding of reality, there is no choice. Hence, the practical memory simply flows whenever there is a need. There is no choice. It's just instantaneous flow. It is just an instantaneous flow. There is no choice. It just happens to be accessed when needed. When there is psychological need and practical need, then you could say that there is an illusion of thought. There is no illusion of choice. Sorry, there is an illusion of choice. There is no actually choice, but illusion of choice. But the psychological memory is removed. There is only practical memory and the memory of deep understanding of reality. Hence, the illusion of choice is removed. Hence, there is no choice. There is just an instantaneous flow, and that is what we call the flow mode. Flow mode is basically choiceless awareness, where there is deep focus and deep awareness of the present moment through the memory of the understanding of reality and access of the practical memory when needed. Basically, choiceless awareness comes from the memory of deep understanding of reality, and choiceless awareness, when needed, access the practical memory. But it is not a choice that it is being made. It is an instantaneous flow. When needed, there is an practical memory in action. You are not making any choice here. It just happens in a flow, like a river flowing through a mountain. There is just a flow, but no choice. And choiceless awareness is the final state of meditation. Meditation has two parts. First is self-analysis, and the second is the final part, which is choiceless awareness. Self-analysis leads to deep understanding of reality, and the deep understanding of reality leads to choiceless awareness, because there is no confusion. And if there is no confusion, there is no thought. Hence, there is just pure observation, and that pure observation is called awareness. So let me make it more clear, and let me tell you a little slowly so that you can understand. Self analysis leads to deep understanding of the reality of the self, which leads to the cessation of confusion which arises from the psychological conditioning. And that cessation of conditioning negates the thought which arises from the psychological conditioning. And if there is no thought left from psychological conditioning, there will be only thought of practical memory and practical thoughts and practical conditioning. And as I said, those does not require choice. Those just happen through instantaneous flow of life. So the negation of conditioning of psychological, like evolutionary and societal conditioning, leads to choiceless awareness. But that negation happens through the process of self-analysis, because self-analysis leads to deep understanding leads to negation of confusion, leads to negation of thoughts from the psychological conditions, and what left is thoughts from practical conditioning, and those practical conditioning does not require any choice because they happen in a flow. Now the fourth topic I will talk about is the psychological time is an illusion.
As long as I'm accumulating, gathering, becoming, there is the process of time. But if there is no gathering, no becoming, no accumulation, where does psychological time exist?
Yes. Well, probably you could say even physical time must depend on some kind of physical accumulation.
Of course, that's the question.
But that we're not denying.
No, that
We're denying the significance of psychological accumulation.
Right, that's right. So thought is the outcome of psychological accumulation. And that accumulation, that gathering, that gives it a sense of continuity, which is time.
Yes.
Now, what is psychological time and how it is an illusion? As I said previously, psychological conditioning is both societal and evolutionary conditioning, and those conditioning creates an illusion of time, creates an illusion of future and past. The psychological conditioning makes you think that you are a self, there is a self, and you are that self. And if you think that you are a self, you will also think about its past and future. But if the self does not exist, neither does the past nor the future for that self exists. Hence, the psychological time is just a mere illusion of psychological conditioning. Yes, the physical time exists, like the space time exists, but the psychological time, which comes from the illusion of the self, does not exist. In simple words, if there is no self, how can there be any past or future for the self? There cannot be. Hence, when you get rid of psychological conditioning, you also get rid of the need to look in the past and to hope for future. So basically, when you get rid of psychological conditioning, you also get rid of psychological time, the illusion of psychological time, and you also live in the present moment. You start living in the present moment. So living in the present moment is basically living in choiceless awareness. When there is no choice, there is no thought, and if there is no thought, basically there is no psychological conditioning, and if there is no psychological conditioning, there is no illusion of psychological time. Hence, you only live in the present moment. You do not care about the past or the future. There is only the memory of, like, functional practical memory, like the memory of language, memory of driving a car, etc., etc. Those thoughts occur, yes, but those thoughts do not create an illusion of time. The illusion of time is only created by psychological conditioning. So choiceless awareness is basically living in the present moment, and living in the present moment comes from deep understanding of reality of the self, and that deep understanding of reality of self comes from self analytics, self analysis.
But truth cannot be revealed through a book, through a person, through an idea, through a ceremony, or having faith. Truth has to be found, not to be told about it. Therefore, there must be complete freedom. And only when there is complete freedom, there is no conflict.
Now the final topic of this video is truth. What did Krishnamurti had to say about the truth? Krishnamurti said that truth cannot be achieved through gurus, books, and other people telling you what is truth. Truth can only be achieved through self-realization, self-observation, and self-analysis. Gurus and books can tell you about the truth, yes, conceptually they can tell you about the truth, but the realization is truly upon yourself. You have to make yourself realize, you have to make your subconscious mind truly realize what is the truth, and that is truly upon yourself, and that comes from self-analysis. Self-analysis is your job. No guru can come and do your analysis for you. You have to do your analysis yourself, because that is self-analysis. Self-analysis means you are doing analysis on yourself. No one else can come and do that analysis. So basically you have to do self-analysis to understand deeply the reality of the self, and to actually obtain the choiceless awareness, to observe without an observer, and to get freed from the conditioning.
That's the most sacred thing in life. And if you have made a mess of your life, change it. Change it today, not tomorrow. If you are uncertain, find out why and be certain. If you are thinking it's not straight, think straight, logically. Unless all that is prepared, all that is settled, you can't enter into this world, into the world of creation. This is the last talk. You won't sit together quietly for a while? What I say, sit quietly for a while.